Good morning again, MDUUC. I'm so glad to look around and see people actually showed up for a message on boundaries. We collectively were wondering. I haven't been on the YouTube stream, so I don't know how many of you are with us. I hope there's a decent number. So I picked this topic, obviously, because it means something to me. As we have begun to re-emerge from our COVID pandemic bunkers, I've observed and frankly participated in some non-optimal behaviors. So today I wanted to take a moment and reflect on the mission of this place and what we are collectively committed to doing, or at least trying to do. Every Sunday, we read in unison our mission statement, part of which asks us to transform ourselves and our world. Now, we're a faith movement with a long history that emerges from the Christian church and often embracing heretical ideas from that tradition, something I actually am kind of proud of. Maybe because I grew up being called a heretic, now I can actually live one unapologetically. However, as I see it, this history actually calls us to draw inspiration from many places, including our historical roots of Christianity, specifically the life and stories of Jesus. Transformation of self and community is a large part of how I read the Christian holy text. There are countless parables or stories of people being deeply transformed from hate-filled people to love-centered folks. After all of these internal transformations in these stories, the characters then move out into the larger world, hoping to transform their communities and the other people around them. I think that this is an implicit part of our mission statement. If you will, as I read our mission statement, it would be something like transform ourselves first, then transform the world. I believe part of that transformation is radical self-love. Kind of like my dear friend Linda, I used to do anything for anyone at any time. It was my lot in life. My family systems was such that I was the peacekeeper of the family and became immensely skilled at pacifying others, even at my own detriment. Now I'm looking around the room. I wish I could look on the live stream because I know I'm not the only one. So maybe we could make some noise in here, maybe a chat in the YouTube room for all of the pacifiers among us. There we go. Just a little noise. I found this a very exhausting and damaging way to navigate my life. It led to lots of poor choices and reinforced my negative perception of my queer self. Through seminary, therapy, horrific tragedy, and some amazing friends and family, I've come to see that I can love and prioritize myself and not need to be the savior for others. I can be a beacon of hope and light for myself and others without the required self-sacrifice. In short, I will leave the crucifixion to Jesus. How can we shift from the drive to solve everyone else's problems to focusing on our own personal transformation? Socio-psychological researcher Brene Brown defines boundaries as the limits we set with other people. They are our bottom line requirements for how we want to be treated. She goes on to say that daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. For me, that last part rings so true. I never wanted to put up my own boundaries out of a warped sense of disappointing others, fearful that they would reject me. A fear of rejection seems to be my lifelong shadow partner. And boy, it gets me every time when left unchecked. Establishing my own boundaries is a part of self-care and an active exercise in self-worth. Poet and author Audre Lorde underscored the importance of self-care back in 1988, years before Brené Brown, when she wrote, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." You see, her experience as a queer Black woman and her insistence on self-promotion continues to this day to be a radical proposition, especially when the systems around us are not optimized for those individuals' success, nor even their survival. Establishing our own boundaries is an essential aspect of radical self-love. And yet, this is only part of the equation. As our own mission reminds us, we are also committed to transforming the world around us. And this means we can't simply remain on the individual healing path without care to those around us as well. After all, humans will human, and once we aren't alone, whenever there's two or more of us, harm is inevitable. We are complex creatures. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has said that we have some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. And this makes community building challenging and interesting all at once. We are a faith tradition that values the building of this ideology, this beloved community. And building that community is not for the faint of heart. It is long and difficult work, but when done, I believe that when I've seen glimpses of it, at least, it has sent my heart into some of the highest heights I have ever felt, and often provided me with the most rewarding relationships that I could hope for. I got permission to share a rather personal story that I hope illustrates the complexities of living in community with one another, and also shows its possible rewards. It was 2016, many years ago, and I was just waking up from a lovely night's sleep in an Airbnb house on the south side of Chicago, where I was staying with two wonderful friends, found family members, if you will, as we completed some of our required seminary coursework at Meadville Lombard Seminary. As I rose from my bed and made my way into the kitchen, just like I had done several days prior, my amazing friend greeted me with a typical morning hug and a warm hello. As she leaned in, my nostrils were filled with an amazing scent with which I was not familiar. Without asking, I inhaled deeply and said, "Gosh, your hair smells amazing today." She recoiled, and while pushing me away, using a tone only used by those who truly love us, she said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I then received a difficult but helpful reminder that our bodies are not ours alone, are ours alone. And even the umbrella of familiarity, even in that umbrella, we do not have the right to invade the space of another without consent, without permission. This discussion also provided me an opportunity for deep self-reflection. Why did I do that? Was there some aspect of my implicit maleness, my bias toward maleness, that said her femaleness was mine for the taking? Perhaps, maybe not. Maybe it was the implicit bias of my whiteness that said her black body was not worthy of autonomy, but was in fact mine for the use. Maybe, maybe not. So often, these situations that we find ourselves in can feel like we are navigating a high wire far above the ground. On it, we find ourselves balancing and the shifting norms around us, the values that we held and hold and that are changing in our greater society, all feel like they are happening instantaneous. One false move, one ill-informed word, and I can be hoisted off my tightrope and find myself falling through the sky. Now, I know for me, that difficult discussion that day with my friend had me caught off guard, hurtling toward the earth, fearful of the impact that my actions had had. However, I never hit the ground, really, because of the mesh of relationship that caught me. I found myself held in community. It was, as Laura Zucker says in her song, the best, worst kind of surprise. Now, maybe you can relate. Perhaps you've touched a person without asking permission. Maybe you provided unsolicited pieces of advice in the past, or maybe you're going to after the service. I'm actually open to that. Maybe you recognize some other problematic behavior that is ableist, sexist, homophobic, or has racial implications that really isn't sitting well in your heart. I have witnessed and participated in violations to these boundaries in this very community, be it witnessing or telling a racially charged story or making a comment during programs or meals without disrupting my behavior or the behavior of others, or perhaps witnessing the touching of Black folks' hair with no reason nor permission. I'm sure that each of you have your own experiences and stories to tell as well. I lift these things up not so that any of us delve into the shadows of shame, but rather as an invitation to shine the light on the parts of our community building that are often missed, underlooked, dismissed. You see, I believe that when we do not deal with these kind of boundary violations, then the onus on resolving their impact is placed on the one who is harmed, and that is just inherently unfair. Part of our community is focused on transforming ourselves and our world. We are a people that make up not only the high wire of life, but the net of community that is there to catch us when we fall as well. Together, I hope that we are not afraid of falling or the discomfort that is part of boundary setting and respecting. It is so important to recognize that setting a boundary is only one part of the puzzle. Just like in our song today from the Time for All Ages, we had to learn not just how to set the boundary, but also how to respect it. I will stop you. I don't like that. You're feeling uncomfortable. You need some space, not around you. I'm not offended nor blue. You've just set a boundary. It's just a boundary. So while the boundaries may be set at the individual level, honoring them is an act of communal love. On that winter day in Chicago, in the cold kitchen, I fell from my high wire. But I didn't die of embarrassment or anything else, because my friend was there to catch me. And while the lesson was difficult, our relationship became so much stronger. This act of building community is important. This is at its heart. I believe that all of our endeavors around boundaries here will leave each of us feeling much more secure in our own individualism and simultaneously allow us to feel more connected to one another. That connection is a belief that we are held in a deep embrace, there to catch us when we slip, when we fall, when we're not our best selves. I envision a world, though, where my own internal transformation is such that all of those things happen without me actually having to cause harm to those I love. One where I can embark on deep self-introspection so that I'm aware of the effects of my actions even before I actually do them. It isn't about being correct. It's about being caring. It is so scary to think about catching ourselves or others. It is scary to think about hurting and repairing that hurt. I know from my lived experience that when I have faith in my community and my relationships, when we work together, setting and respecting boundaries just might be our best, worst kind of surprise.